Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I want to kick it off by saying this is a partnership or a collaboration that She's Independent and Your Cohort do every month. And we try to just bring topics that are relevant to founders, business owners. And for this month, I particularly thought that this was going to be a great topic about benefits overall. I think we all somehow have dealt with this in some shape, way, or form. And there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of information, but also a lot of lack of information at the same time as to how to approach it based on how your business is. So I thought we should invite two incredible people that are very, very knowledgeable in this matter. And so I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But we have Ben and Erika, and I'll let them tell a little bit about themselves and what they do, and then we'll get into all the questions. So Erika, you want to start? Kick it off?
I'd be happy to. Nice to meet everyone. I'm Erika Duncan, and I have a company that I've started. There's two of us that do some HR advising, and I'm also part of Your Cohort. So I am blessed to be able to work with Alex and really see where she's building her network to be and grow to, and it's really an exciting thing. So for me, I do the fractional side of HR, and so I work with a lot of startups, a lot of growing companies, scaling companies, and work on HR strategy, growing an organization, building an HR team, putting in kind of all the blocking and tackling pieces in order for a company to be able to scale and grow and keep up with the needs of talent. So that's a little bit high level of myself.
Awesome. So my name is Benjamin Horowitz, and thank you, Alex, for having me on here. It's always exciting to be on any call with you. I'm the CEO of BSB Consultants. We specialize in group benefits for full organizations, companies as small as 2 and as large as 10,000, working with companies all across the U.S. and internationally. We work on putting together a robust benefit plan that is affordable and comprehensive, and a great strategy, so that it works well for the organization from a financial standpoint, and so that it works out well for the employees as well. And we do a lot in the startup space for companies that are looking to figure out, how do I put together those Google type of benefits for people to attract and retain, and that's really what we do. And I'm proud to be one of Alex's partners and experts, and being a part of her network has just been really awesome.
Great. Thanks so much. I'll briefly introduce myself. I'm Alexandra Satine. I'm co-founder of Your Cohort, and I do fractional COO, CFO work for early stage startups. Erika is my co-founder, and Ben is my business partner as far as everything related to benefits and this whole world. So it's great to be able to collaborate with two people I really care about. And so let's get to it. And let me make sure that there's no one else coming in. Okay, perfect. So I wanted to, again, this is something that I feel very strongly about because I deal with it every day, and I see how many challenges there are about what's out there information-wise. So Erika, I wanted to get your thought as a Chief People Officer. What are the basic benefits an early stage should consider when they're building out a budget, when they're trying to think through how benefits come into play, and laying out that groundwork?
It's a tough question. Honestly, it seems, so basic to us. We all think of health insurance and we think of dental and vision, and obviously those are big pieces to start with. But really from a big picture perspective, it's about talent and about how you want to recruit, how you want to retain, and really where you want to be in the marketplace. And from my perspective, Ben is certainly the expert on the details of the benefits, not me, but from my perspective, the choices are generally around differentiation. How do you differentiate your organization in the marketplace? And to do that, it's again, more the obvious of health and welfare benefits. Retirement can look different and a little challenging sometimes in a startup environment. And how do we do that? A lot of times it's again broadening what one thinks of initially when benefits come up, but it's flexible work arrangements. You know, in our day of hybrid, it sure is a different situation than we all kind of grew up in, if you will, and really working through what does that flexibility look like. Parental leave is a big topic nowadays, and hearing so much more about maternal and paternal time off, and how does that fit? And you know, an interesting conversation is really, and how does it fit with employees who aren't in that stage of life, right? And then they don't have that benefit. So are there other things you can do from a flexible time off perspective that might be inclusive of all your employees? And professional development, I suppose that's the other kind of bigger bucket item that I would mention. And again, happy to talk more about any of those, but just in way of benefits to think about and be creative about, again, the actual traditional benefit platform and options. Ben will certainly tell us a whole lot more about it. And again, for me, it's a bit more of a strategic view to say, again, how do we differentiate ourselves in the marketplace? What are others offering? And to me, it's trying to drive all of those decisions with a tilt towards talent. Most of us, you know, can't do what we do without the people in our organization, especially in the startup stage. So I think those things are really important to think through.
Great. No, I actually, funny you say about the parental and maternal. I'm actually going through that this week, so it is something that a lot of people are talking a lot more about.
A lot more common than it used to be.
Yeah, exactly. And also it's interesting to see the laws that each state has, and how the variance is so big. So I think it's very relevant, and completely agree. And so to that, Ben, can you, from your perspective and what you do day in, day out, can you tell the type of benefits that are available to a startup company? What are the financial, where does the financial responsibility fall versus the employee and the company? Yeah, I love your insight, because I know you and I discussed this also quite a bit.
Yeah, and here's sort of where, you know, Eric and I complement each other, where I go out, I put all these packages together, and same with you, Alex, and then you and your team are able to go out and say, hey, here's how we grow and expand the company, and here's all the ammunition we have to do it, because we have this big, vast platform of benefits and a system to offer to sustain the infrastructure and growth of the organization. You know, if building out a benefit plan for organizations is one, it's dependent, right, on the financial means of the company, their goals and growth strategy of the organization. But when you're a small startup organization, there really is no mandate on you that says, hey, we have to offer benefits. And in different states, there's different size employer groups, whether you're 50 and under, or you're 100 and under. So there's different states that have different mandate requirements. You have ACA, which is the Affordability Cares Act, and I won't get into that. That's a whole nother phone call for another time. But businesses that are starting up, it's more about how do we, as Erika was saying, attract and retain the talent to grow the organization. You're either giving away equity in your company, right? You're either paying them a high salary, or you're coming up with some sort of comp plan structure that's going to encompass a all-inclusive type benefit package to get the people you're looking for and to keep them in your organization. So you can build out a benefit plan that essentially could cost you as an employer nothing, but your employees would pay for it. Or you can go in a different direction and go on a route which is called the PEO model, and we can get into that later on, where there is some cost share there for the employer, because you're looked at like a large size organization, so you have to cover 50% of the major medical costs on the lowest plan. So there is going to be a cost burden on the organization. But in that, you know, in that process, you'll get to offer your major medical, your dental, your vision, your company paid life, your supplemental life, right? Your accidental death and dismemberment, your critical illness, accident, hospital indemnity, legal plans, ID protection. So there's a pretty robust process here in terms of adding things into a company to allow them to grow out with the platforms in place to do it.
Yeah, and I know you and I have done that exercise where some things the company covers 100%, and then we've added other things where it's optional for employees to then go
Right.
and actually I've been surprised when Ben has told me to do that. I'm like, nobody's going to sign up to that. And then it turns out that people do want to pay for it. So it's actually, if you can offer it and it doesn't hurt the company, why not give that benefit to the employee? So that's been an interesting lesson that I've learned as I've done this with Ben. Erika, my question to you to follow with this is, what's the approach that sitting from the human resources side to building a benefit package? Like, how should you even, where do you start? Where do you begin? Like, I think to you and I might come as second nature, but a lot of people who own their business, they don't understand where do you go? Like,
Yeah.
Like, how do you go about it?
Well, it's overwhelming, right? We just listed between the two of us in the first 5 minutes here a whole bunch of things that a company can do to strategize with or around. And I think a lot of times it's starting just with some of the basics as far as understanding options. And I would say assessing the needs and preferences of your workforce. Each of you, I'm sure, on the phone has a different type of business, a different type of startup at a different stage. And I think staying adaptable and willing to change what your benefits are is really important, because I think what happens quickly is you go through stages of growth, right? What the needs are changed, not only of the employee base, but also of the company, whether it's from cost to, again, what they need to do to differentiate, to bring in other talent, et cetera. So I think just starting with what are my options, laying out a current state plan of, hey, here's what I think we're able to do. And more importantly, what our employees are telling us, and then be flexible to what adaptations will need to be made along the way. And the last thing I'd say, especially during the startup, is really the communication to employees about what the options are. So wherever you start, your initial question being, where do you start, right? And so it's understanding those needs, but then communicating so that they understand the true value of them. Sometimes it's difficult to do that. I mean, whether it's even as simple as health, dental, and vision, that doesn't mean the same thing to all of us. Some of us need them more than others, different family situations, et cetera. So I really think communicating the value, and that can come through a lot of different ways. And we'll talk about compensation a bit more later. But again, there's a lot of different ways to be flexible in that startup stage.
Yeah. And I guess I'll add to that. And I know, Ben, we're going to talk about it, but and from your perspective, one question, actually, I got this, I think it was like a day or two ago, Ben, where I said, you should reach out to a broker. And they were like, no, they're going to be too expensive. And so maybe can you, before we go into like the whole structure of PEO and all that, can you tell us a little bit about what are the benefits about working with a broker, and how does that go? Like, what is that entail? What is that?
So, I mean, ultimately, when you're a small group and you're a startup and you're working with a broker, the rates that are set by, the carriers and the states, the commissions that are paid to brokers are already baked in. So there's no additional costs to the organization. And in pretty much almost every single state, you have to have a licensed broker, in order to implement a benefit plan. Similar in kind to even working, with a PEO. There's no downside to utilizing a broker. There's an upside, right? From an educational learning support standpoint. And Alex, you and I have been around the block with this, with numerous clients that have went down the route of utilizing, I don't want to say name a company, but or two that are basically payroll companies that work with a brokerage system. And there's really no connection there. There's no broker real support model for the employee or the employers. And therefore, right, from a service standpoint, there's zero. And then if you're looking for that type of support, you're on the phone for an hour or two or being sent in circles. When you're working with a broker or an agency, you have that direct point of contact. You have people to help hold your hand. When you have employees that are coming on board to the organization, if you don't know the answer, you're able to reach out to that broker and say, hey, can you jump in? Can you help answer this question that we have? And that's really the perk to working with a broker. And we're able to put everything together and simplify all the processes, for you. I mean, this is what we are experts in, and everyone respectively is an expert in what they do. And utilize the people who are really good at what they're doing. And we all as a team collaborate under Your Cohort, right, to make everyone's jobs easier, right, and help them to maximize their ability to be proficient in their job and optimize, right, at the end of the day, what it is that they're looking to accomplish.
Yeah, and so with that, I think it's a great way to also then go into what is a PEO. So I don't think a lot of people understand it. I didn't understand until I met you. You were the one who really is giving me a lot of the education that I now have about what the difference is between a PEO and open market rate. When should you bring in a PO? Because obviously, as you and I know, sometimes you can't, even if you wanted to, you're not able to. So what is the difference there? And yes, and what is open market rate? Because to me, that was when you explained that to me, that was when I finally understood. It clicked, everything clicked.
Yeah. So, and great questions, right? And everybody's is obviously wondering the same thing. It's okay. Well, if I'm in the open market, right, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to get my benefits. They don't really know much about the PEO, or they're scared. Okay, what is this organization? Am I leasing employees from an organization? Where are the benefits coming from? What are all the costs that are associated with it? But PEO is a professional employer organization. Yes, your employees are paid through that PEO, right? Their paycheck is still going to come from that PEO. They are your employees, right? Even though they technically are under the PEO's umbrella. They're yours to hire, to fire, right? To do it. However, PEOs offer a coverage called EPLI insurance, employer practice liability insurance. Okay, this is something very pivotal and important to all organizations, and they should all have it in place. If you're looking to have that type of coverage, you want to verify with the PEO before you're going to let somebody go. But what a PEO allows for organizations is economies of scale. So if you're a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 person company and you're going to the open market to get your benefits, I just did this with another organization that had set their benefits up, and now I came in and they did this before me. They're paying, let's say, $45,000 a year for their insurance. Well, now I take that same population, I go to the PEO, those benefits are now $16,000 a year instead of the $40,000+ a year. Why is that? Because market rates, when you go out into the open market, you're paying whatever the rates are that are set by the carrier, negotiated and approved through the state. When you go to a PEO, you're looked at as a large group organization. So you're going through full-blown underwriting as if you are, in some, I guess in most states, if you're over 50 employer size group, and in about 3 or 4 states, if you're over 100, right, as a large group. What ends up happening is, if you're a 3, 4, 5, 6 person company, if you have any type of exorbitant medical conditions with folks working in the organization, right? The PEOs do have a right to essentially decline your business. Why? Because if you're $1 million a year in claims and they're only going to be taking in $20,000 a year in premium from you, they're going to be exorbitantly upside down, and it will hurt the rest of the block of business. But if you're in the open market, okay, as a small group, you cannot be declined, right? So we've run through this before, where it looks great on paper, it makes financial sense if they get approved, right? But then all of a sudden there is something that pops from a medical and the group gets declined, therefore they have to go out into the open market. But when you're on a PEO, and I tell this to startup organizations all the time, founders are really good at what they've come up with. They've thought of this idea, right? They've nurtured this egg, it's hatched, and now they're trying to figure out, where am I in the nest? Okay, do I spread my wings? What's going to happen? Am I going to fall out of the nest? How high off the ground am I? What they need is essentially that mama bird, right? The mama bird is the PEO, and they come in and they say, hey, you're doing really good at the idea you came up with, you've implemented it really well, but let us come in and protect you. Let us be your compliance experts. Let us be your risk experts. Let us make sure that you are doing payroll properly and registering in the states. Let us set up your benefits and make sure that you are meeting state requirements, right? If you're going to be on a PEO, because you become a large employer. So you get to be essentially nestled by the PEO into helping you do what you did best, is come up with your idea, get it off the ground, continue to go out and raise money, do what you do to continue to grow your business. But all the operational aspect, for the most part, from a benefits and risk and compliance standpoint, is already in place. But you still need other folks to help you. And that's where, like yourself, Alex, and that's where Erika comes in, and other folks and other experts come in and kind of tie it all together in a bow. So that's the direction of a PEO. And you can find exorbitant savings going this direction. But I'm going to pause there because I'm sure there's other questions you have.
Yeah. And by the way, I actually, because this is such a big topic, I just want to open it for a minute to the audience. Does anybody have any questions? Anything that, because I know we've given you a lot of information. So if anybody has any questions or is curious, please, or if you want to write it on the chat, or if you want to talk about it now, feel free to ask.
Can I ask a question about like just really simple steps?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Like when you're starting to think about building a benefits package, like 1, do you do your cost assessment, and do you need the PEO company to help you do the cost assessment? Like what's the first kind of few steps you take before you even like go to a a broker or a company that helps you with this?
And great question, Ellen. Alex, you want me to take that, or?
I think it would be great to hear from both of you, because it's going to be 2 different perspectives. And Ben, go for it. Then I want to know from Erika's, because it's more from HR, and that way she has that insight.
Yeah, when I'm talking to founders and they're saying, hey, what do I need to do to think about standing up a benefit plan? I will ask, well, do you know if the people you're bringing on board or have on board are interested in benefits? Will they take your benefits that you're going to put in place? If you have employees that are saying, hey, I'm on a spouse's coverage, but they cover 100% of my spouse or 50% of my spouse, and me they pay 100% for, and for me I pay 100% on top, or my kids I'm covering additional costs, it might be more beneficial for you to set up a group plan, right? Because your people will want to come onto your health insurance plan. Then it's understanding, sort of, what are your initiatives as a organization? What are you looking to do? What's your growth strategy look like, right? And that's where like Erika will come in and work with you, and Alex, and help you put in those operational business processes into the organization. From there, we'll figure out, well, are the people you're going to hire, can we see what the open market looks like, as well as compare to the PEO. But from a PEO standpoint, in order for us to quote, you need information on people. So you can't say, hey, I'm going to hire 5 people in a month from now, so I want to get a quote from a PEO. They're going to say, well, who are these 5 people? We need to know, information, their names, their date of birth, their zip code, right? Their job titles. And then there's another piece to it. It's a risk assessment. So what do you do as an organization? If you're a manufacturing plant, we got a problem, right? Because that is a big risk from a PEO standpoint. But you can work with certain PEOs that allow you to carve out workers' comp. So that's where, I come in and Alex will say, hey, Benj, I need you to help us figure out the direction this business should go in, right? Maybe they're not good for a traditional type of large ADP, Insperity, Trinet, Paychex type PEO. Maybe they need more of a boutique type of PEO, and I could name 10 of them, but I'm not going to, where we could either carve out the workers' comp, or maybe it makes more sense just because of age-banded rates that we want to keep you out in the open market and carve the major medical out, but still wrap you up fully within the PEO. So there's a lot of kind of the checking the boxes, and that's the process that we would go down to make sure that, is this going to be the right fit for you and your organization? And I think oh, she's still there. Okay. I thought someone.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I mean, I think what you're saying is first do like a survey, like a total reward survey, and see where your people's interests lie and where their current status is. And then based on like where you see the profiles of the organization, whether it's 20 people or 50 people, whatever, then based on that, you have the information of saying X number of people need health, X number of people would sign up for XYZ type of benefits, and then what you're dealing with, and what that could then lend you to get a cost assessment with. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Correct.
And I
Okay.
don't know, Erica, if from your perspective, if there's anything else that you would consider from a human resources side.
I think, I think Ben covered all the pieces of it. I think I would say if I was packaging it, your initial question was kind of a 1, 2, 3. I think, first of
Yeah.
all, it's knowing who the employee base is.
Right.
And to Ben's point, not will be, but is. And so, step one is, as you said, not getting what they would call an employee census, but basically demographic data, and ideally who would take, benefits. That's a difficult question. But I think secondly, I would suggest answering the question, what do I want the solution? What problem do I want the solution to solve? So
Right.
for instance, is it benefits? Are you getting a PEO because you don't have a handbook? Are you right? What specific is it because you don't know, all the states laws that are in, all the states that your startup is in. So I think that some of it, again, if it were me, I'd be getting the demographic information. Number 2 would be, what problem do I need this PEO to solve for me? Right.
Mhm.
3, what specifically do I want to make sure is included? Because from an HR sense, there's a lot of differences in PEO as far as how much support they will provide beyond the benefits and payroll.
Right.
So again, it might be, they might have a 1-800 call a business partner kind of thing, or legal support. And so those
Right.
are different things that people don't tend to lead with, that might not be their main reason for calling one, but you also want to make sure that all your day-to-day needs are covered and that you don't find out those are all additional costs. So again, for me, it would be those 3 steps. The second and third being, what problem do I want it to solve? And then the third one being, what specifics do I want to make sure the PEO will provide for me? And the quote.
Super clear. If you don't go with a PEO, what's the other alternative? Like, you wouldn't be able to do this a la carte yourself, right? You have to go through a PEO.
No. Yeah.
No, you don't have to. There's alternatives. For instance, like I'm a business owner and I'm by myself. I can go on like Ben sent me to Blue Shield of Florida website, and I was able to get insurance on my own, right?
Yep.
Obviously it's not, it's a higher cost than if you go through a PEO, but you can definitely build it out of the box. But that's where in my personal opinion, I think that's where having a broker helps, because like he can help you find the different pieces from different places.
Right.
And then obviously now you're gonna have to manage them sort of separate, but you don't need to, right? You could technically, if you wanted to build your own PEO, you could work with Ben, you could work with Erika. Erika can help you on all the HR support that a PEO gives. Ben could help you build the benefit. So you could patch it up and do it yourself. It's just
Got it.
but you could technically, and then
But
find
that's not like, I mean, ideally that's a little bit of a tougher road to go versus a one-stop shop, which is the PEO.
Correct.
Got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah. The one-stop shop, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
And understanding, back to what Erica mentioned, it's really understanding the organization and the people, and what the appetite is going to be for putting a solution like a PEO in place, and or the financial, right, situation of the company. Some founders, they go out and they say, hey, we're going to take you from wherever you are, come work for us. We're going to pay your COBRA. Well, their COBRA might be $1,500 or $3,000 a month, right, from wherever they're coming from. Or they're going to say, hey, I'm going to reimburse you for whatever your premium is. So I just talked to a founder 2 weeks ago that is reimbursing $750 a month to 3 employees. And I went, well, how are you doing it? And the founder said, well, I just Venmo them every month. And I went, you really can't do that, right?
Yeah.
You can't just give them money like that, right? There's no
Right.
accountability for those funds. So there are other mechanisms that have been put in place where you do have the ability to reimburse, but it's done through legal ways. And that's, again, a broker would educate the organization on how to do it. But I also said, look, just offer a benefit plan via PEO. And now, through the underwriting process, we actually got them better rates for decent plans than what they're reimbursing to people for. So again, it's talking to the right folks to help you align the best possible outcome for everybody in the situation.
Got it. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Any other questions? But I think this is a great segue to Erika. One of the things that, given now that there's a lot of remote teams and people are doing remote work, I guess from your perspective, how important it is to have the right structure and the right support, because of what we were saying. Every state has its own laws. Every state varies. And by the way, these are changing like every minute. It almost feels like every minute. So from your perspective, like how do you build that support? Where does in this case for a startup, this is where, in my opinion, having someone like you is so essential, because you're constantly on top of the business, not the business, but on top of this type of issues. Can you just give us some insight into that?
It is difficult, right? Especially in a number of states. It's difficult anyway. Any of the people side stuff can be tough in a growing company. And so I do a lot of fractional leadership. And so what Alex is talking about is really setting up the HR department. And that might be one person, that might be grabbing it from the PEO, that might be, hey, we have a PEO, but we need someone to really help direct us from more of a strategic or employee relations side. And so when it comes to both remote work and learning states, there's obviously tax and compliance laws, that there's that bucket could go on unendingly. And again, it's an advantage for a PEO or one of those places to help manage a lot of the financial side of those things. From a broader human resource or employee engagement side, it's challenging. Compensation is probably where I spend a lot of time, if not most. And so having competitive ranges and structures that make sense in different parts of the states, right? It's really difficult to be able to have a workforce right now where, do you pay the same based on where they live or based on role? How do you recruit people that, again, we might not have a brick and mortar site in? How do we find them? How do we know who's available? And so all of those things are again, spaces we spend a lot of time in. Again, building compensation structures that are flexible. So you still have the standardization of ranges, but flexibility where you need them based on location, based on supply and demand or economics. So, those are a lot of the parameters that are difficult. And honestly, most founders don't have A time, right? It's not their skill set. And B, they don't need a full-time HR leader. They don't necessarily need a full-time peer yet. But unfortunately, or fortunately, if it falls to other people, other skill sets, and it takes more time for one, because again, whether it's a founder, or operations person, or a clinical person, whatever this case may be, they don't necessarily have the same expertise. So again, a lot of the times, those are the things that we're helping folks do. How do you communicate? How do you engage folks across states? How do you make sure that it's inclusive across, different states and different areas? So just high level, those are a lot of the things that we work through. There's not, one magic pill or one magic answer, but to Alex's point, I think because, my business partner and I spend a lot of time in this space, there's things that we can share. I'm not an attorney, so I don't pretend to know every state, law and regulation, but if we don't know it, we know where to find it. And like you said, they're changing every day. So it's a challenge to work through, and there's just a space we spend a lot of time partnering in.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what you said, Erika, about being inclusive, right? That's always top of mind for all organizations, is making sure, hey, what are we doing? What are we putting out there for our people? And how do we make sure that everything we offer and do is equal, fair, and inclusive across the board? And there are payroll vendors out there that do have a benefit piece tied to it, where it's sort of a self-service model. And what happens is the employer just goes in and says, hey, I'm hiring, I have these employees, but I need benefits. They go in, they click something, they go, okay, here's my major medical, I'm going to pick a dental, vision, boom, roll it out to your people. But because the founders of these companies aren't experts in a benefit space, like one I just did, they picked the New York Metro plan when they have 2 employees in California, one in Texas, another one in Arizona, one in Colorado, one in Florida, one in Connecticut, and the founder and one of the employees in New York. And I said, do you know that these benefits will only work for yourself and the person in New York, and that's it? You can give it to the people outside, but they'd have to go to a hospital in order for it to work. It's a Metro plan. And she went, oh my God, I didn't know. And we quickly were able to cancel it back out and put something else in place. But yeah, it is really about, making sure that what you're doing is inclusive for all your people, and you're offering fair benefits and packages that really financially make sense for everybody.
Yeah, that's actually you and I have gone through that when we have people in California and in New York, and we have to think through that, which it adds it's like it adds an additional step to think through. And if you don't have the right guidance, it definitely you're on your own. Again, like I said, there's a lot of information, but it's hard if you don't know how to manage this information. And
Yeah.
so, with that said, Ben, one of the other items, as we were talking about, comes around to contribution. And I know you and I have also worked on this, right? How much should the company be contributing versus employee? And then there are scenarios where I know I was just recently in that case scenario where I had a minimum. I had no option, right? I had to go with 75%. The company had to do 75%. There was no option. So from your experience managing this, what is trending right now? If you want to say trending, that's a word, but what's happening right now in the around contribution?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always what they call the war on talent, right? That's still a phrase that's used because companies are still competing for folks, and a lot of people working remote, and you're trying to bring people in from wherever they are, across the country. But someone's cost of living in one state is not comparable to someone else's in another state. The other piece is there are certain mandates in specific states, even if you are a small employer, in terms of the type of benefit, where it's got to be a PPO only type of benefit that you're offering. So you can't set up a plan that's an in-network only type of plan and not have an in-network plan. Why? Because now it's not compliant with that state. Now you just put your company in a very, very bad position, and you're going to end up in some sort of litigious situation with an employee and also with the state, because the state's going to also come after you. But from a cost sharing perspective, when you are, and I'm just going to stick with what's under 50, you for the most part don't really have to contribute much of anything unless you are actually in a PEO, because you're looked at as a large group and you fall under the Affordability Cares Act mandate, right, which makes you have to contribute sometimes 50% of the lowest costing plan. And I think in 2024, the Affordability Cares Act has dropped down to, I believe it's 8.3%, right around there, where an employee can't contribute more than about 8.3% of their salary towards their health insurance. And it used to be of household income, but now it's been corrected in the verbiage where it's just the employee. But typically you're anywhere on the employee only coverage for startup businesses. I've seen a lot of my startups offering 100% down to roughly about 60 to 70, 75% on a low plan. And then if anyone wants to get to a mid-tier or a high-tier plan, they're covering, still the basis of the base plan, and it's a buy-up option for others that, if you want to go to those plans. On the dental and the vision options, dental is always important. Everyone uses dental insurance, and, hygiene is important for people. I see companies that are startups that are covering, could be 100% on a low plan dental option or 90% of the dental option. From a vision standpoint, they're covering, anywhere from 50 to 75%. But again, it really comes down to the financial means of that startup organization, and where they can allocate funds that aren't going to jeopardize sort of what you call their burn rate, right, from a startup standpoint. And you and I talk through that all the time is, well, if they know they need to only burn X a month, and now they're going to build in a benefit plan, well, now they need to reallocate funds. And sometimes, unfortunately, for some organizations, this has happened with other startups, they're going, well, if I want to offer a benefit, maybe I got to downsize from 2 or 3 people, and I'm going to retain a core 7, right? So I can really give something robust, and I know I'm good for the next, 18 months and what I'm going to put in place. But again, those are all conversations that, we as a team, right? Erika, myself, you, we have with those clients to say, hey, here's what it looks like. Can you withstand sort of the impact financially to the organization?
And I think this loops back to our earlier points of kind of, you know, the question of what do you do 1, 2, 3, right? And so if you've got these options in your mind or know which ones will resonate most with your culture and your, you know, your talent base, I think to Ben's point, offering those that have the most impact to your organization, and even if it's at a base and give options to buy up, you know, it's not ideal, but the cost to you is low and it's available for employees. So we can always talk through the compensation strategy on that, the opposite side of, you know, how do you pay them enough to be able to buy the things up that they might need? However, you're not funding the cost of it. So, you know, there's again, different ways that we can kind of bring some of these pieces together, because the compensation strategy becomes a really big part of what is, as you already mentioned, total rewards. And how to, you know, again, make sure that we're competitive across the landscape. And then the specific choices almost get easier to make, if that makes sense.
I think that's a great point, because a lot of times when you're doing a offer to someone, to an employee or future employee, you're giving them the base, but there is something that comes on top of that base, which is all
Right.
that we're talking about, and that has a value. And so it's really important when offering the opportunity to an employee to show, hey, this is your base, but these are all the other add-ons, vacation, again, maternity leave, paternity leave, healthcare, all this has a cost that maybe is not a cost that you're putting in your pocket, but you're benefiting, which is why they're called benefits, from it. So I definitely think when doing those job offers, not to diminish the value that is on top of the base.
Yeah, and that's where, you know, like yourself and Erika come into play, where you're able to show a total rewards compensation statement. Because yes, you could offer someone $100,000 a year salary and they're going, but you know, I got to pay X for my benefits. Yeah, but you're actually not making 100. You're making 109,000 a year, because we're covering X amount of this much of your benefit, and plus we're giving you 10, 25, 50, $100,000 life insurance policy.
Exactly.
Right. Plus we're covering your dental, plus we're covering your vision. Plus we put an HRA, a healthcare reimbursement plan in place. Plus we have an FSA to allow you to shelter, you know, put some money away for your childcare. There's a lot of mechanisms here that as startups and as founders that you can, you know, take pen to paper and put it down and show someone who's coming on board as to why you are a differentiator as an organization, that they want to come work for you versus another startup, or leave where they might be very comfortable, but believe in the vision that you have and now want to come work for you, because you're giving them, you know, that foundation that they're going to need, and an understanding and a pathway forward to see, all right, you do see value in them because you're covering X, Y, and Z. And it's not just, hey, here's what your salary is, come join us. It's, we're doing so much more over and above what your salary is, because we want you here. And this is what we do as a company.
Yeah. No, I think there's so much value there. And just because we're almost coming to time, any other questions before I keep going to the last remaining questions? I just want to make sure I open it again to the floor. No? Okay, so I'll go with the last couple of questions. Erika, founders don't consider. Okay, so actually, let me rephrase this. So you have benefits and then you have payroll. A lot of the times people don't realize that both of them can sit in the same platform, and or that they can sit in separate platforms, and that with payroll comes other fees, come a whole other level of nuances. And so how do you take that into consideration when you're trying to, okay, I'm gonna now start running payroll? What should be those things that they're considering, the cost behind running payroll, and how does it work in your perspective if you have them separate versus together?
Right. So it's a great question, Alex, and it's tough because I'm not sure there's always one answer. So I'm going to give kind of a big picture answer and then talk about the costs a little bit. But I think when you talk about benefits, payroll, and what I'm going to call an HRIS system, so the Human Resource Information System, I recognize in a startup that there's not the dollars to have a robust system. I acknowledge that. However, my answer is going to be similar. So it starts to tell you all how I think and what problem are you trying to solve with it. So if it's, hey, I need need a benefits platform because I use Salesforce for my employee record right now, and I track everything there. So that gives you a different perspective of what you're looking for than if you say to Alex's, question, I need it to run payroll. I want to make sure that that's my employee record. I want to track compliance there. I want to have my recruiting and onboarding there. Those are all very different questions. And that's just 2 examples. And there's probably 20 more of what you are looking, again, to solve. So I think when you start to look at platforms, it's very important to understand a couple of things. What do you think you want it to do? And I say think on purpose because you might evolve that thinking a little bit. What again does the PEO provide? Because they're going to have their own platform, right? So you can't have the PEO platform without having them run your payroll. They're not mutually, or they are mutually exclusive there. So if you're doing it on your own, the platform choices are different. Right. So if you're not using a PEO, then you've got platform choices to make. If you're using a PEO, you're using their platform. I mean, generally speaking, those are the 2 differences. So when you look at cost, again, to the second part of your question of what do you look for, it's overall, is it a subscription fee? Is there a per employee per month fee? Is there an implementation or startup, like ask specifically, what are the one-time costs? So there might be, a startup cost and then an integration cost to, again, if you've got other systems that you want it to integrate with. Then there's some longer term things like whether it's customer support. What does that look like? Are there any transaction fees to run payroll? Is there, do I have to have an upgrade for like a customer service line if you want them to 1-800, I have a pay issue? What are some of the things that are provided? So again, from a strategic sense, I will say that it's the cost and making sure that you're getting the services that you want and or think you need. Because again, there are various differences, and typical of any other vendor or partner or whatever, they can be oversold and under delivered. So I would always do reference checks. There's great partners out there. And again, the difference is simply that it might be different for each of you on the phone, right? There's different needs that you might have, or at least different priorities that you might have. So again, understanding the contract terms, how hard is it to get out of if you grow quicker than you think and have something you need, or inversely, if it doesn't grow as quick as you think, how can you again change the terms and or get out of the contract? So that's kind of a big answer, I guess, for a simple question of fees, but I think that there's a lot of pieces to it. And again, kind of jot down what an actual RFP looks like is important to understand what needs you're trying to solve in your company with this either platform and or PEO.
So just to piggyback on what Erika was saying, when you're talking about systems, a lot of startup organizations, right, their budget is what their budget is, and if they're paying for a payroll platform, you contact one of these payroll companies and you're like, hey, I'm about to start possibly offering benefits, but now I need to track the benefits and I want to figure out how do I integrate. And you go from paying your $2 a paycheck to them saying it's now $25. Well, if you're working with the right folks, Erika, myself, Alex, and the rest of her team, we're going to say, well, look, we have alternatives and solutions to help you mitigate that jump in increase. So like for organizations that I work with, and Alex knows from seeing what we've put into place, and same with Erika, is that I have systems where I give it for free to my clients to help mitigate that jump in an expense. Now, there are integration fees if you're saying, hey, I want to have a 360 integration where whatever I do in payroll talks to the benefits, whatever I do in benefits talks to payroll. That's nominal. It's usually 50 cents to $1, right, per person. That's minimalistic compared to the 20 to 25, even sometimes higher costs when you're looking to do it through one of those payroll providers. So you definitely want to use folks that are experts and reach out and talk to them. A lot of people don't know that with myself and Alex or Erika could reach out and they say, hey, we got a question for an employer group. I have an ERISA and compliance attorney that's on staff that I'm able to tap into and utilize, and my clients are able to utilize, and Erika and Alex and their people can utilize. So there's a lot of resources that are behind the curtain. But if you never come and say, hey, let's see what you got in the show, you won't know.
Yeah, I completely agree there. that is the beauty of working with all of us, especially because of the nature of what we do. We do have, all of us have our own background team, if you want to call it. And so to wrap it up, I guess, Ben, what are the benefits that you're seeing? And I think we pointed one out, which was maternity leave, paternity leave, but what is that you're seeing every year? I feel like there's something happening or trending in benefits. What are you seeing aside from those that Erika pointed out that they are happening, that people are asking for in more depth than just what they used to?
Yeah, I mean, look, outside of your traditional standard benefits, I mean, there are a lot of businesses out there that are looking to figure out, how do I implement, a virtual telehealth type service? They want to figure out, is a fertility program, right, the next best thing for our organization? Is putting in a behavioral, right, and mental health support type of program, is that what the company needs? But really, what we're seeing with a lot of the startups that all of us work with together, it's building that initial foundation, right, of putting something in place so that they have something to grow and expand off of. And I think that's what's really become most pivotal for a lot of these startup companies. And I've talked to a lot of them that are like, hey, yeah, we got someone in, they came in the door, and a month later they left. But what happened within that month that they were there? You spent a ton of time training them. You gave them a lot of your, IP. So now they have all your intellectual knowledge that they just learned from your organization. And guess what? They just went somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I would say, start at the basics, understand what you need foundationally as an organization, work with the experts that are out in the market, like everyone who's on here, to help you put together and formulate the best plan of action to help you start with that attraction, right? And with the attraction then becomes the retention. If you're not attracting, there's no one to retain. And if you have no meat on the bone in between that, you're set up for failure. So
Totally agree.
Yeah. And you know what? There is a question I want to make sure I answered, and it's, who manages your long-term incentive plans? So who manages it, like who takes care of the maintenance and making sure that they're run? Is that Eileen, is that the question that you're asking? Like who runs the day-to-day?
Yeah, the administration of your long-term incentives. I mean, obviously, like, you said you can use the PEO for payroll, but payroll is just base salary. Who do you use to do the long-term incentives through? Do you do that yourself? Does the PEO help you with that?
So I would say having an Erika in even if it's someone fractional that comes like 2-3 hours a month, someone that can make sure that everything's running the way it should. That's what I would do. Like if you have a good PO, they'll support you. Like I lean on my PO a lot, but there has to be a connection from someone who's in the company to someone who's talking to the PO, right? So there has to be that bridge. So whether that would be like Erika who would come in, or someone in operations sometimes takes that over, but you want someone who's embedded in the company some way, whether it's fractionally or full-time. And then it's communicating to your different partners. So to Ben, to the brokers, to the PEOs and all that.
And Helen, typically we set that up. It's really setting up a structure, right, of how you want to pay. What is the incentive based on? Is it based on KPIs? Are they the right KPIs? What behavior do you want to see? So some of those are the things that we'll set up. And when I say set up, right, like a summary for it, and a payout. And again, it can be done fairly simply. It's generally on Microsoft Word and Excel. It doesn't have to be overly complicated at this level, but we'll set up the structure to make sure there's a fair and equitable plan that you can communicate. And then to Alex's point, it's working with the PEO to pay it out. So they're still actually paying out the dollars, but we would, again, communicate with, let's say, a CFO or budget for it, et cetera, and then say, okay, it's the end of the year. Here was, the metrics and what the scores were and what the payouts are. But the bigger key is really setting it up, because to your question, if it's set up well, actually maintaining it becomes much simpler.
Yep. Understood. Thank you.
Of course.
So we are out of time, but I do appreciate Erika and Ben for joining this call. Again, I think this is a topic that is sometimes underestimated, but it's such a pivotal part of a business. Even when you start just getting 2-3 people on payroll. So thank you so much for your time. I know that we can find you on LinkedIn. And if not, you can definitely write to She's Independent, and I'm happy to connect you. But have a happy holiday, and I look forward to another year.
Thanks, everybody.
Alex,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.